The rain hammered against the window like it was trying to break in, mirroring the storm raging inside Rowan's chest as he stared at his phone. Finn's name glowing on the screen for the 10th time that hour. He let ring, each unanswered trill carving a deeper gash into the fragile trust they'd built over years of late-night confessions and shared silences. In that moment, with the city lights of Seattle blurring into a watercolor haze outside his cramped apartment, Rowan made the choice that would unravel everything. He silenced the call, tossed the phone onto the couch, and whispered to the empty room, "Not today. Not anymore." Rowan had always been the steady one, the guy who anchored Finn's wilder impulses with a quiet nod or a knowing smile. They met 6 years ago at a dive bar in Capitol Hill, back when Rowan was still figuring out how to wear his queerness like a second skin rather than a secret bruise. Finn, with his easy laugh and ink-sleeved arms, had slid onto the stool next to him that night, nursing a whiskey sour and complaining about a bad hookup. "You look like you could use a story that doesn't end in regret," Finn had said. And just like that, they were inseparable. Best friends. The kind who knew the exact pitch of each other's laugh. The hidden scars from childhoods spent dodging small-town judgments. Rowan worked as a barista at a quirky spot in Fremont called Brewed Awakening, slinging lattes to tech bros and artists alike, while Finn chased freelance graphic design gigs from his cluttered loft in Ballard, dreaming of the day his portfolio would land him in L.A. But lately, the lines had blurred. Finn's casual touches lingered a beat too long, a hand on Rowan's knee during movie nights, eyes locking across crowded rooms with an intensity that made Rowan's pulse stutter. It wasn't just friendship anymore. It was the unspoken what-if that hung between them like fog over Puget Sound. Rowan felt it every time Finn crashed on his couch after a rough night, their bodies inches apart under the threadbare blanket, the air thick with the scent of Finn's cedar cologne and unspoken desire. And yet, Rowan pulled back. He was terrified of rejection, of losing the one person who made Seattle feel like home, of admitting that his heart had been Finn's long before he dared to name it. That morning, the tipping point came via text. Finn had messaged at dawn, "Woke up thinking about you. Dinner tonight? Somewhere quiet. Just us." Rowan's stomach flipped, a mix of hope and dread flooding him. He typed back a quick "sure," but as the day wore on, doubt crept in. What if this was the night Finn finally crossed the line, and Rowan shattered it all by confessing? Or worse, what if Finn didn't? The fear gnawed at him through his shift, steam from the espresso machine doing nothing to clear the haze in his mind. By closing time, with the rain turning the streets into rivers, Rowan deleted the thread and blocked Finn's number. Not forever. He told himself, just 3 days. Time to breathe, to sort the tangle of emotions before he risked everything. Day 1 unfolded in agonizing slow motion. Rowan called in sick to work, claiming a migraine, and spent the morning curled on his balcony, watching fairies slice through the gray expanse of the Sound. His phone buzzed incessantly at first, voicemails from Finn, laced with that familiar warmth. "Hey, man, you okay? Missed you at the shop today. Call me back." Rowan deleted them without listening, each erasure a small betrayal that twisted like a knife. He wandered the apartment, tracing the ghosts of their shared history. The mug Finn had painted with a sloppy rainbow flag on Pride last year. The stack of vinyl records they'd scavenged from estate sales. Bowie and Prince mingling with indie folk that Finn swore captured the soul of the Pacific Northwest. By afternoon, guilt set in. heavy as the damp air seeping through the cracks. Rowan laced up his boots and headed out, letting the downpour soak him through as he trudged toward Discovery Park. The trails were empty, save for the occasional jogger in neon gear, and Rowan lost himself in the rhythm of his footsteps, mud sucking at his soles. He thought about their first road trip, up to the San Juans, where they'd camped under stars so bright they drowned out the city's noise. Finn had leaned his head on Rowan's shoulder that night, murmuring, "You're my constant, Ro. Don't ever change." The memory stung now, a reminder of how much he'd already changed, hiding behind silence instead of facing the truth. Evening brought a fragile peace. Rowan cooked pasta from a box, the kind with too much sauce, and queued up an old episode of The L Word on his laptop, seeking solace in stories of women navigating love's sharp edges. But Jenny's monologues hit too close, echoing his own unspoken fears. As night fell, the apartment grew colder, the rain a relentless tattoo against the roof. Rowan's phone, now on silent, lit up with notifications from mutual friends, Finn's asking around. Everything good? He ignored them too, curling into bed with the weight of isolation pressing down. Sleep came fitfully, dreams fractured by Finn's voice calling his name across an endless beach. Day 2 dawned brighter, the clouds parting just enough to tease sunlight through the blinds. Rowan forced himself to the gym, a no-frills spot in Queen and where the clang of weights drowned out thought. He pushed through sets of deadlifts, muscles burning as fiercely as the regret simmering in his gut. Sweat stung his eyes, blurring the mirrors that reflected a man fraying at the edges, dark circles under hazel eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw. Why was this so hard? 3 days wasn't eternity. It was a pause, a chance to rebuild walls before they crumbled. Post-workout, he grabbed coffee, not from a shop, but a chain place where anonymity reigned. Sipping black brew at a corner table, he scrolled through old photos, Finn grinning atop Hurricane Ridge, wind-tousled hair and cheeks flushed from the cold. The two of them at a queer poetry slam in the Central District, arms slung around each other, beers in hand. Laughter lines creased Rowan's face as he remembered Finn's terrible rendition of a Walt Whitman poem, voice cracking on the romantic verses. "That's for you, Ro," Finn had joked afterward, but his eyes had held something deeper, a vulnerability Rowan now recognized as his own hidden ache. The afternoon dragged him to Pike Place Market, where the bustle of tourists and fishmongers offered a chaotic distraction. He bought a bouquet of wildflowers, daisies and lavender, on impulse, their scent sharp and alive against the salt air. Back home, he arranged them in a vase, a small act of defiance against the emptiness. But as dusk settled, the silence amplified every creak of the building, every distant siren. Rowan's resolve wavered. He unblocked Finn's number, thumb hovering over the call button. Just one message. He thought, "I'm fine." But he didn't send it. Instead, he poured a glass of cheap red wine and journaled, words spilling like confessions. "I love him. God, I love him so much it hurts. But what if he doesn't? What if this breaks us?" Night 2 was worse. Insomnia gripped him. Sheets twisted around legs that itched to run to Finn's door, just blocks away in the same rain-slicked neighborhood. He paced the living room, replaying every almost moment, the brush of fingers during a hike in the Cascades, The way Finn's gaze softened when Rowan talked about his dreams of opening his own bookstore-cafe hybrid. By 3 a.m., exhaustion won, pulling him into a dream where they danced in a sunlit loft. Bodies close, lips almost touching, until Rowan woke gasping, heart pounding against ribs. On day 3, the world felt tilted, colors muted under the returning clouds. Rowan dragged himself to work, apron tied with mechanical precision, but his hands shook as he frothed milk. Customers blurred into sameness, their orders a drone against the roar in his head. A regular, an older drag queen named Vera with sequins that caught the light like stars, eyed him knowingly. "Darlin', you look like you've been wrestling ghosts." Spill or simmer, Rowan managed a half-smile, muttering about a cold, but Vera's arched brow said she wasn't buying it. The shift crawled, each hour a reminder of Finn's absence. No teasing texts about burnt scones. No pop-in with sketches for Rowan to critique. Lunch was a solitary sandwich on a bench overlooking the ship canal, watching barges glide past like forgotten promises. Rowan's mind wandered to their last real talk, weeks ago over takeout pho in his kitchen. Finn had been quiet, picking at noodles, then said, "Ro, sometimes I wonder if we're missing something right in front of us." Rowan's laugh had been forced, deflection his armor. Now, that moment replayed on loop, a what-if laced with poison. As closing neared, the door chimed, and time fractured. Finn stood there, drenched from the downpour, dark curls plastered to his forehead, leather jacket shedding water like tears. His blue eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, were stormy, edged with hurt that mirrored Rowan's own. 3 days. "Ro," Finn said, voice low and raw, stepping closer until the counter was the only barrier. "What the hell happened?" Rowan froze, latte art forgotten, the world narrowing to the man who'd haunted his silence. The surprise hit like lightning. Finn wasn't angry. He was broken. And in that vulnerability, Rowan saw the truth they'd both ignored for too long. But words failed, caught in the throat. And as Finn reached across the divide, the storm outside raged on, promising floods neither was ready for. Finn's hand trembled slightly as it bridged the counter, fingers brushing Rowan's knuckles in a touch that ignited every nerve ending dormant for 3 endless days. The coffee shop's fluorescent hum faded, replaced by the thunderous pulse in Rowan's ears. The scent of wet wool and desperation mingling with the bitter grounds scattered on the floor. "Talk to me," Finn pleaded, his voice a gravelly whisper that cut through the din of the espresso machine's dying hiss. Rowan pulled back, not sharply, but enough to let the chasm yawn wider, his hazel eyes dropping to the scuffed linoleum as if it held answers etched in coffee stains. They stumbled out into the rain together, umbrellas forgotten in the urgency of the moment. The downpour a veil that blurred the edges of Capitol Hill's neon signs and bustling sidewalks. Finn's apartment was closer, a third-floor walk-up in a brick building draped in ivy, the kind of place that smelled like old books and fresh ink. Rowan followed, soaked to the bone, each step up the creaking stairs a reluctant surrender. Inside, the space was a testament to Finn's chaos, sketches pinned to walls like butterfly wings, half-empty takeout containers on a coffee table, a guitar leaning against the window like a silent sentinel overlooking the flickering city lights. Finn shrugged off his jacket, revealing a thermal shirt clinging to his lean frame, tattoos peeking from rolled sleeves, anchors and swallows inked during a rebellious phase in Portland. He didn't offer a towel, didn't bother with niceties. Instead, he faced Rowan, arms crossed like a barrier against the flood of words he clearly ached to unleash. "I thought you were hurt. Or worse, gone for good. No calls, no texts, nothing." After everything, his voice cracked on the last word, and Rowan felt the ground shift, the weight of his silence manifesting as a physical ache in his chest. "I needed space," Rowan said finally, the lie tasting like ash. He peeled off his flannel, draping it over a chair, water pooling at his feet. The room felt smaller, charged with the electricity of proximity. Years of proximity now weaponized by absence. Finn stepped closer, close enough that Rowan could see the faint freckles across his nose, the way his chest rose and fell with restrained fury. "Space from what? From me? We've been through hell together. Your mom's bullshit divorce. My dead-end exes. And now this? Like I'm some stranger you can ghost." Rowan's throat tightened, memories surging like the tide. He thought of the night Finn's father disowned him over a grainy photo from a pride march. How they'd driven aimlessly along the 520 bridge. Finn's sobs muffled against Rowan's shoulder as the lake below shimmered black and endless. Or the time Rowan came out to his conservative family in Spokane during a tense holiday dinner, fork trembling in his hand. And Finn had been there virtually, texting encouragement that felt like a lifeline. Those bonds weren't fragile. They were forged in fire. "So why had he run?" "Because you're not a stranger," Rowan admitted, voice barely above the patter of rain on the fire escape. "That's the problem. You're everything. Finn. And I couldn't breathe around it anymore. The confession hung there, raw and unadorned. The first crack in the dam he'd built. Finn's eyes widened, storm clouds parting to reveal a flicker of understanding. Then something deeper, recognition. Perhaps, of a mirror Rowan held up to his own fears. They sank onto the couch, a sagging relic from IKEA days, knees brushing in the narrow space. Finn poured them whiskey from a bottle on the side table, the amber liquid glinting like captured sunset. "Start from the beginning," he said, handing over the glass, their fingers lingering in that now familiar dance of hesitation. Rowan sipped, the burn steadying him, and let the words tumble out. The text that morning 3 days ago. The terror of dinner turning into confession. The block born of self-preservation. He spoke of the walks in the park, the wine-fueled journals, the dreams that left him hollow upon waking. Finn listened, chin resting on his hand, blue eyes never leaving Rowan's face, absorbing the pain like a sponge. When Rowan finished, silence wrapped around them, thick and contemplative. Outside, a car horn blared. A jogger splashed through puddles. Life in Seattle marching on indifferent to their unraveling. Finn set his glass down, leaning forward until their foreheads nearly touched. "You idiot," he murmured, not unkindly, a ghost of his usual grin tugging at his lips. "I've been in love with you for 2 years. Terrified you'd bolt if I said it. That dinner, I was going to lay it all out. Roses, bad poetry, the works." The revelation landed like a soft punch, stealing Rowan's breath. Love. Not the platonic kind they'd cloaked themselves in, but the real, bone-deep variety that promised joy and wreckage in equal measure. Rowan's hand found Finn's, calluses from guitar strings rough against his palm, and for the first time in days, the knot in his chest loosened. They talked then, really talked about the almost kisses, the jealous twinges when one dated others, the quiet nights where proximity was torture. Laughter bubbled up amid the tears, Finn recounting how he'd stalked Rowan's Instagram stories like a creep. Heart emoji hidden in drafts. But joy was fleeting, a candle in the wind. As the whiskey warmed their veins, deeper shadows emerged. Finn confessed his own doubts, the freelance grind wearing him thin, the fear that loving Rowan meant risking the friendship that had saved him. "What if we fuck this up?" he asked, voice small. Rowan had no pat answer, only the truth. "Then we fix it." Together, they sealed it with a kiss, tentative at first, lips brushing like testing waters, then deepening into something fierce and claiming, hands roaming with the urgency of the withheld. That night, they didn't sleep much. Bodies entwined on the couch, then migrating to Finn's unmade bed, where sheets tangled around limbs slick with sweat and rain-dried skin. It was exploratory, reverent, fingers tracing tattoos, mouths mapping collarbones, breaths sinking in the dim glow of street lamps filtering through blinds. Rowan marveled at Finn's vulnerability, the way his moans softened into whispers of Rowan's name, a litany against the dark. Dawn crept in gray and forgiving, finding them curled together, the world outside hushed as if holding its breath. Yet, as morning coffee brewed, strong black for Rowan, loaded with cream for Finn, the afterglow carried undercurrents. Finn's phone buzzed on the nightstand, a name flashing, Jasper. Rowan's stomach dipped, an old insecurity stirring. "Who's that?" he asked lightly. "Pouring mugs." Finn glanced, waving it off. "Just a client." Nothing, but the seed was planted, a whisper of doubt in the fragile newness. They spent the day in domestic rhythm, grocery run to the co-op in Fremont, where they bickered over organic ale versus cheap spinach, a lazy hike along the Burke-Gilman Trail, hands linked under low branches dripping with residual rain. Evening brought them to a small queer bar in the International District, dim lit with fairy lights strung like constellations. Over craft IPAs, they toasted to beginnings, but Finn's laughs grew forced as his phone lit up again. Rowan caught glimpses, text from Jasper, casual but insistent. "Old flame," he ventured later, back in the apartment, as they scrolled takeout menus. Finn hesitated, then sighed. "We hooked up a few times last month. Before I decided it was you or nothing. Haven't replied in weeks." The admission landed heavier than expected, a reminder that 3 days of silence had been Rowan's choice. But Finn's world hadn't paused. Jealousy flickered, not blazing, but enough to warm Rowan's cheeks. They pushed it aside, opting for Thai and a movie, Brokeback Mountain. Ironically, its quiet tragedy's a counterpoint to their tentative hope. As Ennis and Jack's story unfolded, Rowan's arm tightened around Finn, a silent vow against such endings. But in the quiet hours after, as Finn dozed against his shoulder, Rowan stared at the ceiling, mind racing. Love was here, real and warm, but so were the ghosts of what-ifs. Jasper's shadow loomed, a harbinger perhaps of conflicts yet to come. Outside, Seattle slumbered under a blanket of mist, the city that had cradled their friendship now testing its evolution into something more. The following weeks unfolded like a reel of stolen frames. Each moment with Finn a snapshot of possibility etched in the damp Seattle air. They fell into a rhythm that felt both novel and inevitable. Mornings tangled in sheets. Sunlight slanting through half-drawn curtains to paint golden paths across bare skin. Afternoons where Rowan pulled double shifts at the coffee shop, only to find Finn waiting at closing, sketchpad in hand, doodling caricatures of rude customers to make him laugh. Evenings were theirs, strolls along the waterfront, hands brushing against the chill off the sound, or hole-in-the-wall dim some in Chinatown. Chopsticks clacking over shared plates as stories flowed like the wine they savored sparingly. Rowan marveled at the shift. How Finn's presence filled the corners of his life, once shadowed by doubt. The man was a whirlwind of affection. Notes slipped into Rowan's apron pocket. "Your smile's my favorite latte art," or surprise picnics in Gasworks Park. Blankets spread amid rusting industrial relics. Baskets brimming with cheese, crackers, and Finn's lopsided sandwiches. Sex wove through it all. Not frantic now, but exploratory, lazy Sundays where they'd map each other's bodies with lips and whispers, learning the arch of a back, the hitch in a breath. Rowan's heart swelled, the 3 days of silence receding like a bad dream, replaced by this vivid now. Yet, fissures appeared subtly, like cracks in pavement after freeze-thaw cycles. Jasper's text persisted, innocuous at first. "Hey, love that design you did for the festival poster. Drink soon," but Finn's dismissals grew terser. His phone flipped face down more often during dinners. Rowan noticed. Of course, he was attuned to Finn's tells. The way his jaw tightened or his laugh shortened. One night, after a gig at a local open mic where Finn showcased his graphics on projected slides for a queer spoken word artist, they walked home buzzed on adrenaline and cheap gin. "You were brilliant," Rowan said, nuzzling Finn's neck in the alley shadows. Finn grinned, but his eyes darted to his pocket as it vibrated. "Work stuff," he muttered, silencing it. Rowan let it slide, but the seed sprouted roots. The next day, while Finn was out scouting vinyl at Easy Street Records, Rowan borrowed his laptop, innocently, to pull up a playlist, and the chat window popped open. Jasper's messages scrolled. "Miss our talks. That night at the cabin. Unforgettable. Up for round 2? Rowan's blood ran cold. The words painting pictures he didn't want. Finn and Jasper tangled in some remote Olympic Peninsula getaway. Laughter echoing where Rowan's should have been. He closed the tab, heart hammering, and when Finn returned, arms laden with Prince reissues and a triumphant smile, Rowan mirrored it, burying the unease under kisses that tasted faintly of betrayal. But it festered, coloring small things, a delayed response to a text. The way Finn's gaze lingered on his phone during their hike up Rattlesnake Ledge. Paranoia, Rowan chided himself. Born of old wounds, his ex in college. The one who'd ghosted after a whispered, "I love you." Finn wasn't that. He was the constant. Still, doubt whispered, and Rowan began mirroring the silence he'd once inflicted. Questions swallowed like bitter pills. The conflict crested on a crisp October evening, leaves turning the streets of Ballard into a fiery mosaic. They'd planned a quiet night in, candles flickering on the coffee table amid takeout from Finn's favorite ramen spot. But Finn arrived late, hair disheveled, cheeks flushed as if from more than the wind. "Traffic," he said, dropping a kiss on Rowan's forehead. But the excuse rang hollow. As they ate, legs entwined on the floor, Rowan's resolve cracked. Jasper again, the name dropped like a stone into still water. Finn paused, chopsticks midway to his mouth, broth dripping forgotten. What? Rowan's voice steadied, though his hands trembled. I saw the messages. The cabin. Round 2. The air thickened, ramen steaming between them like a barrier. Finn set his bowl down, face paling. Ro, it's nothing. He won't let go, but I have. Swear it. But the defensiveness in his tone, the way his eyes flicked away, ignited the spark. Nothing? While I'm pouring my soul out. You're entertaining exocups. Rowan's words sharpened, years of guarded hearts spilling forth. He stood, pacing the worn rug, the room closing in. Finn rose too, reaching out. It's texts. Babe. I delete them. You're the one I come home to, but the endearment felt like a bandage on a gaping wound. Rowan whirled, hazel eyes blazing. Home, after 3 days of me vanishing. You think that's enough? I ignored you because I was scared of this, of us being real and still breaking. The argument escalated, voices rising over the hum of the fridge, accusations flying like shrapnel. Finn countered with his own hurts. You shut me out first. Ro. Made me chase shadows. And now you doubt me. Truths unearthed. Finn's fear of commitment rooted in his father's abandonment. Rowan's terror of abandonment echoing his parents' fractured marriage. They circled each other, breaths ragged, until Finn grabbed Rowan's arms, pulling him close. I choose you. Every damn day. The kiss that followed was desperate. Teeth and tears. A collision that left them bruised but clinging. In the aftermath, they lay spent on the bed, limbs heavy, the fight's embers smoldering. We need to talk more, Rowan murmured, tracing the swallow tattoo on Finn's forearm. No secrets, Finn nodded, pressing lips to Rowan's temple. Promise. They blocked Jasper together, a small ritual, and fell asleep to the sound of distant fairies. Unity fragile but renewed. But the peace was illusory. Days later, at a gallery opening in Pioneer Square, Finn's designs featured in a queer artist showcase. Rowan spotted him across the room, laughing with a group that included a familiar face. Jasper, tall and brooding, hand lingering on Finn's elbow as he gestured animatedly. Rowan's champagne flute nearly slipped, the bubbly turning sour in his throat. He wove through the crowd, smile plastered, but by the time he reached them, Jasper had melted away, leaving Finn oblivious. That night, back in the loft, Rowan confronted it gently at first. Saw you with Jasper. Finn's brow furrowed. Genuine confusion. What? He showed up uninvited. I told him to back off. Doubt warred with trust. Rowan's voice wavering. It looked close. Finn's frustration boiled over. Jesus. Ro. You're seeing ghosts. I can't prove a negative. The word stung, reopening the rift, and Rowan stormed out into the night, rain welcoming him like an old friend. He ended up at Brood Awakening, the shop dark and empty, keys granting solitary refuge. Curled in a booth, he wept, silent sobs for the love he craved, the fear that sabotaged it. Hours passed, phone silent, until a knock echoed. Finn, drenched again, eyes red-rimmed. I'm sorry, he said through the glass. For everything. Let's fix this. Rowan let him in, and they talked till dawn, peeling back layers. Finn admitting he'd met Jasper for coffee once. Postblock. To end things cleanly, a mistake, born of habit, and Rowan owning his paranoia as a shield against pain. Forgiveness came tentatively, sealed with quiet intimacy in the pre-dawn hush, bodies moving slow and sure. But as winter loomed, gray skies pressing low, Rowan wondered if the storm had truly passed or merely gathered strength. Winter clamped down on Seattle like a vice, the days shortening to bruised purple twilights, the air crisp with the promise of snow that rarely fell. Rowan and Finn navigated the fragile truce with deliberate care, like hikers testing thin ice over a hidden creek. They instituted rituals, weekly check-ins over Sunday brunches at a Greasy Spoon in Georgetown, where hash browns crisped golden and coffee steamed in mismatched mugs, no phone zones during dinners. Devices banished to drawers like naughty children. It worked. Mostly, laughter returned, laced with a new tenderness. Finn's sketches now featuring Rowan's profile in soft pencil strokes, capturing the curve of his smile in ways that made Rowan's chest ache with gratitude. Yet, the undercurrent persisted, a subtle hum beneath the surface. Jasper faded to a ghost, his messages ceasing after Finn's firm block. But his shadow lingered in Rowan's quieter moments, a reminder of vulnerability's cost. Work provided distraction. The holidays ramped up at Brood Awakening, lines snaking out the door for peppermint mochas and gingerbread lattes, the air thick with cinnamon and cheer that Rowan forced himself to embody. Finn threw himself into a big project, a branding overhaul for a local LGBTQ plus youth center. His loft transformed into a warren of mood boards and half-eaten energy bars. One frosty December evening, as fairy lights twinkled in shop windows along California Avenue, they attended the center's holiday fundraiser. A cozy affair in a converted warehouse, strung with garlands and pulsing with indie electronica. Dressed in slim black jeans and a wool sweater that hugged his frame, Rowan felt Finn's eyes on him all night, possessive and proud, arms slung low around his waist as they mingled. "You clean up nice," Finn murmured, nipping his earlobe amid the crowd. Rowan flushed, the warmth cutting through the chill seeping from drafty doors. The surprise came midway through, when the MC announced a silent auction for artwork donated by local talents. Finn's piece, a digital collage of intertwined figures against a stormy skyline, evoking urban isolation yielding to connection, drew bids that climbed steadily. Rowan watched, heart swelling, until the final bid, from Jasper, who stepped forward with a check, his smile polished but eyes sharp. "Beautiful work, Finn." "Congrats." The room applauded, oblivious, but Rowan's grip tightened on his champagne, bubbles fizzing like warning signals. Later, in the coat check line, Jasper cornered them, casual as a summer breeze. "Didn't expect to see you two here." "Rowan, right? Finn's mentioned you." The lie was smooth, but Rowan caught the flicker, Finn's jaw clench, the subtle step forward to shield. "Yeah," Rowan replied evenly, meeting Jasper's gaze. "And you're the ex who doesn't quit." The words escaped sharper than intended, slicing the air. Jasper chuckled, low and unamused. "Ouch. Just supporting the cause." Finn intervened, voice steel, "Appreciate it, but we're good. Take care." He steered Rowan out into the night, where flurries danced like confetti. But the mood had soured. The drive home, Finn's beat-up Subaru rattling over potholes, was thick with unspoken barbs. "You didn't have to go nuclear," Finn said finally. Gloved hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Rowan stared out at the blurred taillights of the 99. "He bid on your art like it was a claim." After everything, Finn pulled over near a deserted playground. Engine idling. "It was a donation, Ro. Not a declaration. You're letting him win by doubting us." The accusation landed, forcing Rowan to confront the mirror, his insecurity. A self-fulfilling prophecy. They hashed it out in the car, heaters blasting against the frost etching the windows, words tumbling amid apologies. "I hate feeling like the second choice," Rowan admitted, voice small. Finn cupped his face, thumbs brushing away a stray flake. "You're the only choice. Always." The kiss that followed thawed the chill, leading them home to a night of slow unraveling, clothes shed by firelight from the gas insert, bodies worshipped with the reverence of survivors. January brought a deceptive calm, the new year dawning with resolutions whispered over midnight champagne, more trust, deeper honesty. They escaped the city for a weekend in the Olympics, renting a cabin near Lake Crescent, where evergreens bowed under rare snowfalls. The isolation was balm, hikes through muffled forests, boots crunching virgin powder, evenings by the hearth, cocoa steaming as they shared childhood tales. Finn opened up about his Portland days, the hookups that filled voids left by family rejection. Rowan confessed the college breakup that taught him love's teeth. Vulnerability bridged them, nights spent in fevered closeness. The creak of the bed a counterpoint to howling winds. Back in Seattle, reality intruded. Finn landed the youth center gig full-time, hours stretching into late nights at the office downtown. His returns marked by exhaustion rather than energy. Rowan supported it, packing lunches with notes tucked inside. "Fuel for my hero," but loneliness crept in. Shifts at the shop overlapping with Finn's absences. One Tuesday, after a grueling double, Rowan arrived at the loft to find Finn asleep on the couch. Laptop open to emails. A half-written response to Jasper buried in the thread. "Thanks for the feedback, but I'm committed elsewhere now." Best. Finn. The discovery hit like a slap. Not for content, closure. Clear as day, but for the secrecy. Why hide it? Rowan woke him gently, the conversation unfolding over cold pizza at the kitchen counter. "I was going to tell you," Finn said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Didn't want to dredge it up." Rowan nodded. "But the trust, patched so carefully, afraid anew. We're in this together. Remember? No more solo missions." The pattern repeated in micro, Finn's delayed replies, Rowan's probing questions, cycles of reassurance followed by quiet withdrawals. By Valentine's, tension simmered beneath red foil hearts and rose bouquets. They celebrated low-key, dinner at a bistro in Belltown, overlooking the ferry lanes, but midway through dessert, Finn's phone lit with a call from work, pulling him away for an emergency. Rowan finished alone, watching couples sway on the makeshift dance floor, a hollow ache settling in his ribs. That night, the dam broke. Finn returned after midnight, apologetic with takeout eclairs, but Rowan's patience snapped. "Is it always going to be this? Me waiting while you chase ghosts?" Finn recoiled, hurt flashing. "Work, Ro. Not ghosts. You think I don't want this?" The fight spilled into the street, voices echoing off brick walls. Passers-by averting eyes. I gave up everything for us, Finn shouted, breath fogging the air. Quit talking to friends. Cut ties, and you still see betrayal? Rowan stormed to his own apartment, the familiar lock clicking like finality. Days blurred into a cold echo of their original silence. Texts unanswered. Calls dodged. Finn showed up on day 2. Flowers wilting in the chill. Pleading through the door. Don't do this again. We can fix it. Rowan let him in. But the embrace felt obligatory. The love strained through filters of fatigue. Spring teased, with crocuses pushing through mulch. But their winter lingered. A therapy suggestion from Vera at the shop, couples counseling? Honey, it's not weakness, it's wiring, landed awkwardly. Finn resisting with we're fine, even as cracks widened. Rowan agreed silently. Fearing the truth, perhaps they weren't. The climax brewed at Finn's gallery show in May. A solo exhibit in Sodo's warehouse district. The space buzzed with patrons, artsy types in ironic tees. Collectors with checkbooks. Finn's pieces commanding walls. Abstracts of longing. Figures reaching through fog. Rowan arrived fashionably late. Pride swelling as Finn worked the room. Charismatic in button-down and slacks. But then Jasper entered. Uninvited specter. Toasting Finn's success with a flute raised high. Their conversation looked innocent. Claps on the back. Shared anecdotes, but to Rowan's eyes, it was intimacy, a betrayal crystallized. He confronted Finn in the back office, amid stacked canvases and the scent of turpentine. Him again? At Unite. Finn's face crumpled. He bought a piece. Networking. Row. The lie, or half-truth, ignited fury. Bullshit. You're flirting with disaster because it's easier than committing. Words escalated. Accusations of sabotage. Of clinging to safety nets. Finn's voice broke. Maybe I'm scared. Of losing you. Of this being all we get. The door slammed behind Rowan as he fled. The city a blur of rain-slicked streets. He didn't go home. Instead, a bar in Pioneer Square. Shots of tequila blurring edges until a stranger's number scrawled on a napkin offered escape. He didn't call it, but the temptation lingered. A mirror to Finn's lapses. Dawn found him on a bench by the waterfront. Gulls wheeling overhead. The sound of vast, indifferent witness. Love, he realized, wasn't the absence of storm, it was dancing in it. But could they? The betrayal unfolded not in a single act, but in a cascade of revelations that eroded the foundation Rowan and Finn had so painstakingly rebuilt. It started with a misplaced email, innocuous on the surface, a confirmation for a weekend workshop in Portland. Queer Creatives Retreat, dated 2 weeks prior. Rowan stumbled upon it while borrowing Finn's laptop during a rare afternoon together. The cursor hovering over the inbox like a finger on a trigger. The body was brief. Thrilled you'll be joining us. Finn. Last year's cabin share was magic. Let's recreate. Attached, a photo of Jasper leading a group hike. All smiles and solidarity. Finn cropped out, but his presence implied. Rowan's vision tunneled. The screen's glow harsh against the loft's warm lamplight. Portland. The cabin. Dates that overlapped with Finn's solo design trip last month. The one he described as boring client meetings in a hotel. He closed the laptop softly, as if noise might shatter the illusion of calm, and waited for Finn to emerge from the shower. Towel slung low, droplets tracing the V of his hips. Hey, Finn said, leaning in for a kiss. But Rowan turned away. The motion small but seismic. What's this? The printout, hastily run off at the corner Kinko's, trembled in Rowan's hand. Finn's face drained of color, eyes darting from the paper to Rowan's unyielding stare. Ro, it's not what it looks like, Rowan finished, voice eerily steady. A retreat. With him. While you lied to my face about where you were. Finn reached out, but Rowan stepped back, the space between them a chasm wider than the sound on a foggy morn. The argument that followed was surgical, each word a scalpel dissecting trust. Finn admitted it piecemeal, the invite from a mutual arts circle. Jasper's persistence masked as professional camaraderie. The weekend as networking. Nothing more. No sex. He swore. But the nights in shared cabins. Late talks over whiskey by the fire, intimate in ways that blurred lines. I went because I was lost, Finn confessed, sinking to the floor, back against the bed. After our fight in May, I needed space to think. Not from you, from the mess we'd become. Rowan's laugh was bitter. Hollow. Space. Like I took 3 days ago, and you judge me for it. He paced, the rug's fibers muffling footsteps that echoed his fracturing heart. Memories assaulted him. Finn's promises whispered in the Olympics cabin. The therapy pamphlets they'd tossed aside. The gallery night where Jasper's toast had felt like a gauntlet. You chose him over honesty. Again, Finn's tears came then. Hot and unbidden, carving tracks down cheeks rough with stubble. I chose wrong. Every time. But I came back. Ro. To you. The plea hung. Desperate. But Rowan felt the shift, love's flame guttering, replaced by a cold clarity. You packed a bag that night. Essentials zipped into silence. Clothes. Toothbrush. The journal where he'd chronicled their highs and lows. I need to go, he said at the door, Finn's hand clutching his sleeve like a drowning man. Not forever. Just until I can look at you without seeing lies. The drive to his sister's place in Tacoma was a blur. Wipers slashing at the relentless drizzle. Radio static drowning thought. Lila, 2 years older and married to a steady accountant named Mark, welcomed him without questions. The guest room a sanctuary of crisp linens and lavender sachets. Days stretched into a numb routine. Morning runs along the waterfront, where freighters loomed like judgmental giants. Shifts picked up at a temp barista gig in the Puyallup Fairground strip mall. Anonymity in the steam and chatter. Lila prodded gently. He's a fool. But he loves you. But Rowan waved it off, burying hurt in takeout and true crime podcasts. Finn's messages arrived in waves. Apologies layered with memories. Remember the ferry to Bainbridge. Your hand in mine as seals bob beside us. I miss that us. Rowan read them in the dead of night. Thumb tracing the screen. Tears blurring pixels. He replied once. Kurt, need time. The crisis deepened when mutual friends weighed in. Vera's call. Voice syrup thick with concern. Boy's a wreck. Darlin. Showing up at the shop. Eyes like saucers. Even Jasper reached out. Via a blocked number unblocked in grief. Finn's hurting. We hooked up once. Post-fight. Stupid. He's yours. The confirmation, physical betrayal. Not just emotional, landed like a gut punch. Rowan retching into the sink. Lila rubbing his back as sobs racked him. Hooked up. In the cabin's shadow. Whiskey loosened limbs. Jasper's hands where his should have been. Rage followed grief. A bonfire that consumed. Voicemails left unheard. Photos deleted in a frenzy. The flannel Finn had gifted him bald and hurled into the closet. "How could you?" he whispered to the empty room. But the question echoed unanswered. The emotional nadir came mid-June. Solstice sun mocking his darkness. Rowan drove back to Seattle unannounced. Not for reconciliation, but confrontation. The loft door yielded to his spare key, still valid. A cruel oversight, and there was Finn, disheveled amid sketches, eyes lighting with fragile hope. But Rowan cut him off. Jasper's text printed and thrust forward. "Once, that's your definition of nothing." Finn crumpled, knees buckling to the floor. "I was drunk. Broken. Thought you'd never forgive the lies. So I. Self-sabotaged." The admission poured out, the hookup as punishment. A way to force the end Rowan seemed to court with his doubts. "I wanted you to hate me, so it wouldn't hurt as much." Rowan's fury peaked. Fists clenched against the urge to strike, not flesh, but the intangible wall of hurt. "You don't get to decide that. You wrecked us because you couldn't fight for us." He left then, truly, changing locks on his apartment, blocking numbers in a digital purge. Summer sweltered. Unusual heat wave turning Seattle into a steam bath, mirroring Rowan's inner boil. He threw himself into work, pitching a pop-up book cafe at Brood Awakening, a space for queer authors' readings. Shelves stocked with Baldwin and White, distraction and creation. Friends rallied, game nights at Vera's, where drag queens dispensed wisdom over cosmos, a weekend in the San Juans with Lila, kayaking turquoise waters that washed away some salt. But the void persisted, a hollow in his chest where Finn's laugh once resided. Panic attacks ambushed him at the market amid fishmongers' calls, breath shortening as if drowned in the shower, water pounding like accusations. Therapy entered the picture. Solo sessions with a counselor named Theo in Capitol Hill. A soft-spoken bear of a man who unpacked Rowan's patterns, the ignore as armor. Love as threat. "Healing isn't erasing," Theo said. "It's rewriting the story." Finn, meanwhile, spiraled. Friends reported bar crawls turning maudlin. Art stalled in half-finished strokes. A letter arrived in July. Handwritten on linen paper. "I betrayed you because I feared I'd never be enough. But you are my enough. If there's a path back, I'll walk it on knees." Rowan burned it in the sink, flames licking words to ash. But the scent of Finn's ink lingered. August brought a tentative thaw. Not reunion, but reflection. Rowan volunteered at the youth center, Finn's old haunt, leading workshops on storytelling, irony sharp as a blade. One evening, he spotted Finn across the room, facilitating a panel. Thinner, eyes shadowed, but voice steady. Their gazes locked, a current humming, but Rowan turned away, heart pounding. The crisis peaked that night in a dream, Finn drowning in the sound. Rowan reaching but fingers slipping through water. Waking sweat-soaked, Rowan texted, "Coffee." Neutral ground. Tomorrow. Not forgiveness, but a door cracked open. The betrayal scar would remain, but perhaps, in its wake, space for something scarred and strong. Autumn arrived in Seattle with a sigh, leaves turning the sidewalks of Fremont into amber carpets. The air scented with damp earth and distant wood smoke. Rowan's text to Finn hung in the ether like a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters. Received. But the response delayed. A full day of radio silence that tested his resolve. When it came, it was simple. The park bench by the canal. 2 p.m. No expectations. Rowan arrived early. Thermos of black coffee in hand. The bench worn smooth by countless confessions. Ducks quacked lazily on the water. Joggers pounded paths. Normalcy a stark contrast to the knot in his gut. Finn appeared on the dot, bundled in a pea coat that swallowed his frame, hands shoved deep in pockets against the chill. He looked older, lines etched deeper around blue eyes. Stubble silvered at the edges, months of unraveling etched in flesh. They sat, space between them a careful buffer, steam rising from their shared thermos like unspoken prayers. "Thanks for coming," Finn started, voice rough as gravel. Rowan nodded, sipping to steady nerves. Needed to see if there's anything left to salvage. The conversation meandered at first. Surface ripples, the pop-up cafe success. Finn's new series of paintings inspired by fractured light through rain. But Theo's words echoed, rewrite the story, and Rowan steered deeper. The betrayal. It gutted me. Not just the act, but the why. Like you chose escape over us. Finn winced, gaze fixed on a passing barge. I did. Panicked when you pulled away after the gallery. Thought if I burn it down, the pain would end quicker. He paused, drawing patterns in the damp wood. Therapy's helping. Group for creatives dealing with. Fuck-ups like me. Rowan absorbed it. The admission a bomb and Barb. He'd start a group too. A queer men's circle in the Central District, where stories of infidelity and forgiveness circled like shared fires. I get it now, he said slowly. My ignoring you? Same poison. Running from fear. They talked for hours, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows that mirrored their tangled paths. No grand gestures, just honesty, Finn owning the hookup's shame, Rowan voicing the terror of abandonment that made trust a battlefield. From there, the healing began in fits and starts, a mosaic piece from shards. They agreed to dates, not as lovers yet, but friends rebuilding bridges. First, a walk in Discovery Park, trails crunching underfoot, conversation light on birdsong and heavy on regrets. Finn shared sketches from therapy prompts, abstract grief rendered in blues and grays, Rowan offering feedback that felt like touching a bruise. Tender but necessary. Second, coffee at a neutral spot in Wallingford, where laughter crept in, hesitant, over burnt croissants and tales of disastrous blind dates for mutuals. Rowan's pop-up thrived, shelves bending under volumes of Audre Lorde and Ocean Vuong, readings drawing crowds that spilled onto the sidewalk. Finn attended one, incognito in the back, applause mingling with pride in his eyes. Afterward, over vegan tacos at a truck nearby, he said, seeing you shine. That's what I want. Your light, not dimmed by my shadows. Rowan reached across the table, fingers lacing a spark, not blaze, but enough to warm. Crisis lingered in lulls, nightmares of cabins and lies woke Rowan. Sheets damp. Finn confessed panic over a casual touch from a colleague. Ghost of guilt flaring. They navigated with tools from Theo, breathing exercises shared over video calls when distance bit. Letters exchanged like missives from opposing camps, detailing wins and slips. Lila hosted a barbecue in Tacoma. Neutral turf, where Finn charmed Mark with guitar strums around the fire pit. Rowan watching with a cautious heart. October, deep in the colors. Pumpkins grinning from stoops. And with it, a milestone, Finn's apology letter. Rewritten in session. Read aloud on a bench overlooking Lake Union. I see now how my fears poisoned us, he recited. Voice steady. Forgive me not for perfection, but for the work to be better. Tears tracked Rowan's cheeks. Not salt to sorrow, but release. I forgive, he whispered. And meant it, the weight lifting like fog burn off by noon sun. Intimacy returned gradually. Not in bed sheets, but gestures. A hand on the small of the back during a film fest in STFF. Bodies leaning close in the dark. Shared cooking in Rowan's kitchen. Pasta sauce simmering as hips bumped in playful rhythm. Sex. When it happened, a rainy November night. Thunder rumbling like distant applause was rediscovery. Slow. Eyes locked. Whispers affirming presence. Here, Finn murmured against skin. Only here. Challenges arose. Testing the mend. Finn's ex-boss offered a LA gig, tempting stability, but uprooting. Go if it's right, Rowan urged. Fear clawing, but trust winning. Finn declined, choosing roots. Rowan's family visited for Thanksgiving, awkward with his parents' lingering unease over his queerness, but Finn joined, piecing conversations with quiet grace, earning a gruff nod from Rowan's dad. Winter solstice brought reflection, a hike to the Winter Star Party at Goldmire Hot Springs. Backs to the trail's mud. Emerging to steam rising from mineral pools under a canopy of constellations. Naked in the water. Scars bared, literal ink on Finn. Emotional maps on both, they soaked. Stories drifting like steam. We're survivors, Rowan said. Head on Finn's shoulder. Of each other. And ourselves. Healing wasn't linear. Setbacks dotted the path. An argument over forgotten plans. Jealousy flaring at a party flirtation. But they paused. Breathed. Returned to the circle of men where vulnerability was currency. Christmas Eve. They hosted Vera and friends. Tree twinkling with ornaments scavenged from thrift shops. Laughter echoing as stories swapped. In the quiet after, curled by the tree, Finn gifted a custom sketch, them as intertwined trees. Roots deep in Seattle soil. Our story, he said. Rowan kissed him, slow and sure. Ours, by New Year's. The arc bent toward wholeness. Fireworks burst over the Space Needle, visible from Finn's balcony. Arms wrapped tight as resolutions formed unspoken. Continue. Evolve. Endure. The journey from silence to surprise. Betrayal the bomb. Had forged something resilient, a love not unscarred, but unafraid. Spring 2026 bloomed with defiant vibrancy. Cherry blossoms unfurling along University Avenue like pink promises against the ever-present gray. Rowan and Finn's life wove into this renewal. Threads of routine laced with the iridescent glow of hard-won grace. The pop-up cafe evolved into a permanent fixture. Walls painted in soft sage. Shelves groaning under titles that spoke to hidden hearts. Arundhati, Roy's Migrations. Justin Torres, Jagged Intimacies. Readings became communal rituals. Voices rising in the lamplit space. Finn often in the front row. His presence a quiet anchor. Their days hummed with domestic poetry. Mornings where sunlight slanted through kitchen blinds. Coffee brewing as Finn scrambled eggs with theatrical flair. Yolks breaking golden like dawn. Afternoon split. Rowan steaming milk into hearts for patrons. Finn at his drafting table. Lines flowing freer now, infused with the light of forgiveness. Evenings were sacred. Bike rides along the locks at Ballard. Watching salmon leap silver arcs or curled on the couch. A blanket fort against the world. Binging Schitt's Creek with commentary on Moira's wigs and David Patrick parallels that hit too close. Love manifested in the mundane, deepened by trials. Finn's art show in June, a series titled Echoes in the Rain, drew crowds to a gallery in Georgetown. Pieces evoking loss and reclamation, silhouettes embracing amid downpours. Colors bleeding like healed wounds. Rowan curated the opening. Fairy lights strung like their first tentative dates. Vera emceeing with sequin flair. Jasper sent a card, congratulations. No strings, tossed unopened. A relic of shadows banished. But humanity's core lay in imperfection. A rough patch hit in July. Heat wave turning the loft into a sauna. Tempers fraying over Finn's overdue deadlines and Rowan's exhaustion from a cafe expansion. Words sharpened. You're always working, and you're always doubting, culminating in a night apart. Rowan crashing at Lila's, staring at Tacoma's lights like distant stars. Morning brought Finn at the door, not with grand gestures, but a thermos of iced latte and a sketch, them as weathered oaks. Branches entwined despite storms. When not done growing, he said. They spent the day at Alki Beach, toes in surf, rebuilding with sandcastles and seashell vows. The deeper healing unfolded in service. They volunteered tandem at the youth center, co-facilitating workshops on identity and resilience, Finn on visual storytelling, Rowan on narrative's power. One teen, Alex, wide-eyed and freshly out, shared a poem of fractured homes. Finn's eyes misted. Rowan's hand finding his under the table. In those moments, their story transcended. A beacon for others navigating the same jagged paths. We give what we wished for, Finn murmured later, over post-session beers at a dive in Soto. Summer waned into a golden September, marking a year since the 3-day silence that birthed surprise. They road-tripped to the San Juans again, ferries slicing through swells, bikes strapped to the rack. Camping on Orcas Island, tent pitched by a cove. They built a fire as stars pricked the velvet sky. Over marshmallows charred to perfection. Finn pulled out a ring, simple tungsten, etched with coordinates of their first bar meet. Not marriage. Not yet, he said, voice thick. But partnership. Through every rain, Rowan slipped it on, silver catching firelight, tears blurring the proposal's simplicity. Yes, he breathed, pulling Finn close, the kiss tasting of smoke and salt. They made love under the canopy, canvas whispering against skin, bodies a language of recovery, gentle, fierce, eternal. Back in Seattle, life layered on. Rowan's parents visited for his birthday. Awkwardness thawing over Finn's grilled salmon and Lila's pie. His dad even clapped Finn's shoulder. A gruff good man. Holidays blended families. Finn's chosen kin of artists and activists mingling with Rowan's blood. Toasts raised to imperfect loves. The narrative's close came quietly, as all profound truths do. On a crisp November eve, rain pattering like applause, they stood on Rowan's balcony, city sprawling below in jeweled haze. Finn's arm around his waist, Rowan's head on his shoulder. That 3 days, Rowan mused. It was the end of hiding. The start of us. Finn turned, eyes deep as the sound. And a surprise? That love endures the breaking.